Good afternoon, members of the media, wider viewing and listening public of Trinidad and Tobago. Good afternoon. It is now 10 minutes past 12. I'm here with my ministerial colleagues, Minister of Works and Transport, Minister Sinanan, Minister of Local Government and Rural Development, Minister Hosein, Minister of Public Utilities, Minister Hunte, and the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, Minister Clarence Rambharat. We have called today's press conference just to give the public an update on what has been going on over the last few hours. So to bring you all up to speed as to what has happened since we last addressed you just before 5 p.m. and at about 4 p.m. yesterday. I can tell you that after leaving yesterday's press conference, the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Griffith, and the CEO of the ODPM, Major General Retired Smart, and myself went up in the National Security helicopter to do a quick reconnaissance whilst we still had some light of the areas of Trinidad that may have suffered some of the effects of flooding. At yesterday afternoon by 5:30, the vast majority of water had subsided throughout the areas that had experienced flooding. Of course, some of the low-lying areas continued to have subsisting water, and it was not running off. The Caroni River continued to rise, and we saw rather, a number of areas, in particular the Grand Bazaar, what we call the Grand Bazaar interchange. In fact, I have to say that it was somewhat amusing to me because some of the photographs that I took having an aerial view yesterday evening and circulated to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and some other disaster management units, I saw suddenly appear on social media and one of the daily newspapers crediting those photographs to somebody else when I know it wasn't TT Weather that took the photograph. So once again, members of the media, thank you all very much. But all joke aside, we saw some areas still suffering water. I was in constant contact with my colleagues who are seated here with me, as well as some others. I know that they continue to be out on the ground throughout the course of the night. Whilst water subsided, again, thanks to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service for the work they did. Commissioner Griffith himself led some of the men and women of the police service in directing traffic at the interchange and other areas on the highway last night. Minister of Works and Transport took the decision to open the bus route that continued during the course of this morning. So yesterday we got a better idea of what was happening. Thankfully, overnight, there was not any heavy rainfall in the northern range, and that certainly helped. So water was able to subside and to start running off. This morning, the vast majority of water had run off in most areas. Again, some of the low-lying areas, the bamboo settlement, continue to have some water, and I'm sure my colleagues would get into that. Major General Retired Smart and myself at 9 o'clock this morning went across to Tobago to do a reconnaissance of Tobago, and I've just literally returned from that. Whilst there, I did get the opportunity to meet with Chief Secretary Kelvin Charles. Minister Hunte will address us on some of what is going on from a public utilities point of view in Tobago. But I can tell you all that the communications in Tobago were down. Unfortunately, there are still some issues being resolved with TNTech, but I'm happy to tell you as I was walking through Lower Scarborough, the general manager of TNTech, Mr. Ramsuk, is actually across there on the ground leading the charge, and he has crews and they're working hard towards restoring electricity. So what happened with the TSTT system is whilst they were running the generators and keeping their comms up and running, of course the generators run out of fuel after a while, and then the process of refueling whilst TNTech is getting electricity back up and going. I can tell you that the Scarborough areas, they are engaged in cleanup. So I did see the Scotiabank, the Church's Chicken, the grocery, the bar along Lower Scarborough, the TNTech compound. I met Chief Sec Kelvin Charles at the Port Authority compound over there. The customs office was badly hit in terms of flooding, and they're cleaning up. So there's a lot of cleaning up going on in Lower Scarborough. The THA have things under control. Mr. Charles and his team are going out and doing the assessment, and we had a conversation about whatever help and assistance central government can give, and in particular I gave him the assurance he had the full help of national security. We began a discussion about what we can do in further contingency planning going forward. I'd like the public to be aware that even outside, at least when I came in a short while ago, you may be seeing some bright sunshine. I had a brief conversation with the head of the Met Services before coming into this press conference, and they continue to maintain the red level alert for riverine. The Met Services are monitoring some weather systems, and they believe we can be subject to rainfall this afternoon, some intermittent showers, and some possibility of thunder showers. Right now, we are in a high tide. The high tide is going to stay until sometime tonight. So if we do experience the level of showers that the Met Services believe we can, it does mean that we may experience some flash flooding. So I want the people of Trinidad and Tobago to continue to be aware of that, continue to monitor it. If the Met Services are correct and we do start to experience rainfall with this high tide, there may be flash flooding and flooding in certain areas that have been experiencing flooding. Having said that, one of the things that I did see from the aerial view, and I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate my colleagues, the Minister of Works and Transport and the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development. I saw firsthand from the air the type of work that they've done in some of these tributaries and the rivers, in particular around the Greenvale area. At this time, there have been no incidents at Greenvale and Oropoon, and I can tell you it is because of the work that I saw that was done and from the air, and even along some of the other larger rivers. Unfortunately, what has happened is in doing some of the work, they also built up the riverbanks. So we have been getting reports that where there have been experiences of flood, what has happened is some very inconsiderate citizens have decided to remove the material that was used to build up these riverbanks. So there have been breaches along the riverbanks because people have decided, quite bluntly, to steal the material that the Ministry of Works and Local Government and Rural Development put along some of these riverbanks. Citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, that has to be among some of the most irresponsible type of behavior, to steal material from the state and thereby affect citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and put us at a disadvantage and in fact destroy the hard work that was done. So what I'd like to say is you all are seeing the effects. We're not out of the woods as yet. You are seeing the effects of the hard work and the preparation that has been done. The disaster management units have been doing their work. Minister Hunte will talk about public utilities, but they have also been reacting in a very, very professional manner. And I'd like to thank all of them for that once again. What I saw in Tobago, as I said, the lower Scarborough area, they're in the cleanup mode. As we flew over Tobago, there are minor landslips along some of the roads up in the northwest and northeast of Tobago, but none are impassable. And you're seeing the crews on the ground working to restore that. I think at this stage, their main concern is getting back the restoration of electricity, which the TNTEC crews are working assiduously on. At this stage, we just ask people to maintain caution. If there is flooding that takes place this afternoon, again, we repeat the same things we said yesterday. Be cautious. Don't go walking out into flood waters. Be careful about the electricity. Understand flood waters have disease in it, and you can get affected by that. If there are flood waters, do not go driving your cars through the flood waters. So yesterday evening, I did see, unfortunately, once again, some incidents of persons having abandoned their vehicles because they drove into floodwaters and then couldn't get out. On the Eastern Main Road, there was a very unfortunate incident where a vehicle went over into a ravine, and that in the process, Minister Hosein will talk about that. I was immediately in contact with him from the air, and he gave me the assurance it would be removed. But we saw vehicles still trying to make their way through very deep floodwaters. You can't see the road. You don't know what is happening under the water. In some instances, we actually saw, especially last year, cars floating away. Do not take the risk. If we begin to experience any flooding over the next 24 hours, I ask persons to just please exercise common sense and caution. There's also, please be aware of potential rough seas. I saw the Jean de Villette. I'll tell Minister Sinanan setting sail from the Scarborough port, and then when I was coming back over to Trinidad, doing quite well coming across the north coast. I was very proud to see that moment. So members of the media, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, we continue to monitor things going on, and we'll provide you all with the information as we have it. At this stage, I'll pass over to Minister Rambharat for him to tell us a little bit of what he has been experiencing and dealing with over the last 24 to 48 hours.
Good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago. Weather is a big factor in this Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. In 2016, we had significant weather issues towards the end of the year. In 2017, we had to deal with Brett, and later in the year around Diwali, we had some weather issues towards the end. Around Christmas period, we had some issues. 2018, of course, apart from some issues early in the year, October last year, the country and agriculture experienced significant damage through the weather conditions that we faced. For this year, of course, we've not had issues with rain. We had issues with dry weather and the struggle of the farmers in particular to get water. Well, I have been warning that the time will come when we'll switch from no water to too much water. I think we've been spared the brunt of the damage in the sense that the key farming areas in the country have not been affected. I've been out to most of the places, Maloney, Orange Grove, which is an area that tends to flood once we have this type of rain. Piarco, Arangwes South, Arangwes North, Moruga, Tabaquite, where most of the farming is done on the riverbank, Woodland and areas in South, Navet in the Rio Claro area, all except Arangwes North and now Arangwes South have been spared of any significant effects of the severe rain. In Arangwes North, a lot of the fields were underwater yesterday, and the farmers were late into the night, early this morning, trying to get the water out. Now, the last time Arangwes North has had issues with significant water in the field was 1989, and it's been quite a while. From time to time, you may get specific fields suffering for water on the field or rain or something, but this one is really unprecedented, and it was a concern to me because I know that the Ministry of Works has done a lot of work in terms of raising the bank of the river in that area. In fact, in the dry season, when my colleague Minister Hunte and I were dealing with the issue relating to no water in that area, we also listened to the farmers who talked about the need to clean that river, and the Ministry of Works and Transport did in fact do significant amount of work. What I've found, and I just came from there again, there have been interference with the bank. That is a very high bank. The bank has been raised maybe more than 10 feet, and it is very difficult to breach that bank. But again, Ministry of Works and the Minister of Works had circulated a drone footage earlier this year of somebody removing soil from the Caroni bank and taking it to somewhere in Valsain to backfill a place. And we see at least 3 areas in Arangwes where that has been done. In fact, in one area, one development where I spent a long time this morning, in the presence of the owner, you see the development taking place. You see a wall being built on the riverbank, a fence, and you also see maybe a 50 to 75-foot section of the 10-foot bank removed. And the residents of the area have said that it was removed and the soil was used to backfill the land on which the development took place. Now that is significant because the major flooding in Arangwes North is relating to that particular breach in the bank. As it is now, most of the farmers have, in Arangwes, we have a significant amount of short crops. So you're talking about tomato, sweet pepper, melon, cauliflower, lettuce, celery, those things that are close to the ground, on the ground. And if you have a foot of water in those fields, the farmers would lose the entire crop. So that is what we're dealing with in Arangwes North. Up until last night, Arangwes South, which is traditionally affected by any overflow from the Caroni River, once the Caroni River breaches the bank, Arangwes South will be affected. There was no impact up to last night when I was there, but I just came from Arangwes South, and what has happened is that some of the rainfall has affected some of the low-lying fields, and as the water has come from Arangwes North through Arangwes South, there have been some areas, low-lying areas, where the water has settled, and that would affect those farmers. In fact, the ministry People were out in Aranguez North, and I left them in Aranguez South, speaking to the farmers, taking photographs, taking videos, and starting to receive the claims for assistance that the ministry would normally provide. I was in the Mount Lambert area, quite surprising again. Mount Lambert is an area that should not be flooding, but again, the Sawa River, I saw at least 3 areas where the Sawa River bank was breached. The farmers say to me, the water just cut through the banks, but when you see a 10-foot bank cut away, and you see PVC piping at the bottom of the 10-foot cutaway, you realize that that had been cut previously for the installation of PVC piping to draw water during the dry season. Even though it may have been filled back in, it is easy for a full river to cut that or to damage that or to breach that. So again, I must say that in dealing with all the farmers I've dealt with, farmers are extremely resilient people. I've had no problems in dealing with any of them, but they are in between people who would do things in a very selfish manner. And in Mount Lambert and in Aranguez, I believe a lot of the damage has been done because of man-made breaches in the river banks, which were raised specifically to contain the floodwaters. Two of the things I want to highlight is, one is that I always say when we have issue with flood damage of crops, particularly the popular short crops, the farmers would not plow the land to replant until the sun comes out and the ground is hard. And in that intervening period, you may find people who go into the fields to pick the salvage and try to sell. And as it is now, the produce looks very healthy. But if you're talking about cabbage, I haven't seen any cabbage, but I've seen cauliflower. If you're talking about cauliflower, you're talking about sweet pepper, you would start to see the damage. And I want to tell the consumers that most of the farmers in this country have not been affected. Most of the produce you would see in the market has not been affected. But I still caution that people observe, look for floodwater damage. If it's cabbage, try to get your vendor to cut the cabbage. When you cut cabbage, you see sign of flood damage inside the cabbage. Follow the advisories issued by both our ministry and the Ministry of Health in terms of handling food which may have been affected by floodwaters. That is the first advisory. The second thing I want to say is that in previous years, particularly in Orange Grove, because of this thing called the giant African snail, which is something that affects the farmers, but it's also something that should not be held with the bare hands because it is a potential carrier of diseases. We encourage people who have them in their yards, in their fields or whatever, to remove them, wear gloves, remove them, drown them, burn them, destroy them, bury them. But again, once you're dealing with floodwaters, you would see that the giant African snail is an excellent climber. They do not wish to drown, so you'd see them moving up the walls, you'll see them on electricity poles, you would see them trying to escape. The other thing about it is that if they are caught in the floodwaters, they would move, and it means spreading the areas that they may not currently be. So I want people who are across the country, but in particularly Aranguez South, and those areas, Mount Lambert, those areas that have been affected by flooding, particularly those areas where we have farming, to be on the lookout for giant African snail and to ensure that they handle it, they can remove it, but they take all the precautions issued by the Ministry of Agriculture. And I think our farmers are anxious to get on, to recover. Fisher folk have been affected, of course, because we've been in the midst of a rough seas bulletin since last week. We've been out in the fishing communities, encouraging people to put their vessels to safety and don't leave them where they could be damaged. The rough seas bulletins continues because once we have tropical storm or serious weather activity in the region, we will have those northerly swells that affect our coastline, particularly the East Coast. So I've had no reports from our fisher folk. I know that fisher folk in Tobago would have been affected, but we've had no reports as yet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rambharat. Just before I pass over to the Minister of Works and Transport, I've been asked by the Met Services to just remind Trinidad and Tobago they have reduced the adverse weather alert to yellow You all would be aware that it went down from orange to yellow a little earlier today. That's the adverse weather, which was as a result of Tropical Storm Karen. But we still maintain, as I said a short while ago, the red level warning for riverine flooding. I'll pass over to the Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you and welcome again. Just to give a brief update as to the status of the Ministry of Works and Transport. In terms of all our roadways, the highways and our main roads, they are all passable. This morning, we were cleared between the Mount Hope and the Uriah Butler interchange, where that was the final piece of concern that we had. That is cleared. The bus route was open up to 12 o'clock today. That have since been closed because there's no part of the island that cannot be accessed. And that is a far cry from what happened a year ago with the same amount of rainfall that it took us about a week to clear some of the roadways. I'm very happy that all our roadways are cleared. In terms of the rivers, a lot of our rivers are still at a very high level. However, we continue to work in certain parts of the areas where we have blockage. We identify maybe about 15 to 20 blockage this morning, and we are out there trying to clear these blockage, because if we don't do that and we get more rain, we know what can happen there. So we would have identified all the areas in the different rivers that trees would have come down, bamboo would have blocked, even garbage to some extent, and we have crew out there that will be addressing all these blockages. In terms of the cleaning of some of the highways and some of the areas that were flooded, we have engaged the fire service, we have engaged WASA to some extent, and we are working very close with the Ministry of Rural Development to ensure that the cleaning continues, because there is a hazard if you have mud on the road to drivers. And even when the mud, it should, in case the sun comes out and the mud is dried, even the dust tend to be a problem. So what we're doing is a comprehensive cleaning and washing of all the areas that has to be used. One of the things that I'm proud about is that the Caroni River, for the first time in years, have not burst the bank. And that would have saved us significantly. This morning I was at the Fremont Road with the media, and I had to remind them that last year, one day after we got the downpour, we had to use trucks, the army trucks, to get into that area. This morning, new members of the media and the population drove with your cars. And that was as a result of the amount of work that went into the rivers. I keep talking about 400 desilting projects, and some people told me I was repeating myself. These are the benefits of that major desilting program. What we did in that area is that we built the banks, and that is one area that nobody went and interfered with the banks. And that entire area in Central was saved. And this morning we saw the results of that. So the work that went in helped us significantly. Right now we have one area that is underwater still. That is the bamboo area. Bamboo 2 is not as bad. As a matter of fact, there isn't any set of water in bamboo 2. Bamboo number 1, we have some challenges there. We have the pumps. We're installing more pumps in that area. And in bamboo number 3, where we visited a little while ago, the water is receding significantly. The reason why the bamboo area got, especially bamboo 3, is because of the breach in the San Juan River. San Juan River, and the Minister of Agriculture indicated as to why we got that breach, because of human interference on some of the banks. All the rivers were desilted, and they really stood up to the test of time. The areas that were breached in the St. Anne's, the Maraval, the St. Joseph rivers were really the lowest point of the rivers. And within minutes, the water was able to go back into the river once the tide dropped, and we will save any significant flooding in these areas. So I want to compliment the staff of the ministry for that program, and also rural development for their assistance in that program. We would have learned a lot coming out of the flooding last year. And what some of the residents are telling us is that their life can be back to normal within 1 day after the major flooding. It took us last year almost a month to get back to that position. And again, that is as a result of good coordination between all the ministries. So the worst, I mean, it is not over as yet, but I am really happy that today the Ministry of Works and Transport could stand and say, whatever work went into the program from January to now, we saw significant improvements. There are certain areas like the Greenvale area that was saved because of the work that was done in the Caroni River, work that was pending for the last 28 to 25 years. That started in January, and that stretched from Arima all the way coming down, all the way down to where the water enters the ocean. And that is a program we're going to continue. Sangre Grande, there was no flooding because of the extensive work that we did in these areas. So most of the areas in Central and so that was spared was as a result of the work that was done by the government over the last couple of months. And in South, I mean, the same amount of rain, remember that, fell last year, and we saw almost 60% of the island underwater. This time around, you probably had less than 5% of the areas underwater, and the water was not necessarily life-threatening as we saw before. It was just the low-lying areas, and those areas, the water just can't run off. In most cases, you have to pump them out because those areas are below the river levels. Okay, the Ministry of Works, we are out there, we are working on the areas that will be blocked. We're doing as much work. We can report today that none of our infrastructure was compromised. We started inspecting the bridges and so. There's no compromise in any of the infrastructure. The road work stood up, and we continue to be out there doing what we can to ensure that life returns to normalcy in the shortest possible time. Thank you.
Minister of Local Government and Rural Development.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to my colleagues, members of the media. Following up on yesterday's activities, I would like to report this morning. And firstly, I must say a special thank you to all the mayors and chairmen of the 14 corporations, all the councillors, the disaster management head, who is with us, Mr. Jerry David, and all his officers at the corporations. I must say that reports coming in this morning is that out of the 14 corporations, only one is severely affected this morning. That's the Tunapuna, that's in the Bamboo number 3 area. The water reports I have in front of me, water has receded in 14 corporations, in 13 corporations, and the roads are passable. Heavy rains fell yesterday, and especially in the Sawa regional area. In the Bamboo area, about 500 families were affected, and water is running off very slowly. We have people down there from the Tunapuna Corporation and the Disaster Management Unit helping the residents of the area. Nothing cannot be done until the water is receded. Last night, the Coast Guard were out in the Bamboo area assisting families to evacuate their homes, to go to a shelter. We have one shelter open right now. That's the Bamboo Settlement Government Primary School on Jafar Street. One other shelter will open, which is the Beatam Gardens, but the residents have already left there, and with 2 persons up to this day. 2 persons stayed overnight. The next major achievement now will be the cleanup efforts. And CPEP has started since almost 5 o'clock this morning. In Central, they started to clean Freeport, Waterloo, Carpichaima, Chase Village, Edinburgh, Claxon Bay. They started to clean over 25 roads, 10 homes, 4 schools. Kokie Government School, Durham Hindu School, Palo Seco Secondary School, St. John's Anglican. In the north, Barataria area were cleaned, the 12th, 11th, 10th, 9th Streets, Pittsburgh, Sawa, Santa Cruz, Mount Hope, Mount Lambert, and Aranguez. Over 175 homes were cleaned, and cleaning is ongoing. Now, we mustn't take CPAP for granted, because these are workers that is committed, and I have seen them firsthand this morning. They are on the road, they are helping families who house need mud came into their homes, sweeping out. Some people had to take the things up at the next level, but the workers are in the homes with the families assisting. And anyone needs help, feel free to contact your counselor in the area or the disaster management coordinator in the area. In closing, I must say that we will be doing our assessment at the ministry. And the persons who continue to dump illegally, and we actually find them, they will be charged, they will be taken to court, and if found, charged. We did one this year so far, because people don't want to come forward and say, well, this person did this, but somebody brought a video to us, and we took that video, and we used it in the court, and the person was charged. Unfortunately, when they were charged, they got a discount. So the charge was around 3,000. We're laughing, but serious. The charge was 3,000, and I think they paid only 500. So we're going to make sure, right, we have the corporations out there, and we're going to make sure that they go out there and find these people who caused this flooding. Because if you watch when the flooding takes place, there's only plastic bottles and styrotex and fridge and stove. We've seen it still, you know. We've seen it still. I don't know why we can't come together and live as, you know, clean and law-abiding citizens. So I am calling on the 14 corporations, through the CEOs, to assist the communities, the household, people in the household, assist the schools, because we need your assistance. And we will be here. I am committed. The ministry staff is committed. And we will continue to work for the people of this beautiful country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Hosein. And now Minister Hunt.
Okay, yesterday when I reported, I talked about Tobago and tea and tech. As you heard Minister Young saying, that you had the CEO of tea and tech is actually in Tobago. He was out there from early this morning, and not only him, he's also accompanied by his Chief Technical Officer, Mr. Austin. Yesterday they were outstanding about 60 jobs in Tobago. This morning they were down to about 44 outstanding jobs, and they are working to try to resolve most of those jobs by the end of the day. In addition to the staff from T and Tech, the high-level management staff that is there, 25 additional technicians were also sent across. And on the boat across, about 5 trucks are also going across to assist. I have been in constant contact with Assemblyman Jacob, who is in charge of the utilities across there, ensuring and trying to give him as much support as possible. So the major problem in Tobago, yes, we had the mobile substation that brought on some of the areas, especially in the east, in the Studley Park area. But that Studley Park substation was down, and they're expecting at least within the next hour to get that up, which will resolve at least 50% of the problem in the east of Tobago and in the northern side. So hopefully, but within the hour, 50% of the 44 outstanding issues will be resolved. And they are working by at least, they give me a commitment, by about 9 p.m. tonight, most of the areas in Tobago will be resolved. As you heard, there was some TSTT issues with regard to the fiber optic cable, at least the land element before it goes into the sea from Toko. They had some problems, both the TNTech and the TSTT fiber optic cable in the Nagas area. They had some problems. Right now, that is being resolved. They have TSTT crews and TNTech crews. That should be cleared up within the next hour to 2 hours. In regard to Trinidad, again, TNTech has done a fantastic job. I reported about 28 jobs yesterday. By 8 o'clock last night, that number was down to about 14. And as we speak now, most of the areas, Blanchisseries, they were down. I think last report that I got in there is that has been resolved. The area in Toko has been resolved. And there are some small areas in North Trinidad, Debe, Rich Plain, and a small community in Makrit. Small areas that are still having some problems, and they should be resolved within the before the afternoon is over. So again, TNTech was able to restore within 24 hours most of the problems, and we are presently dealing with ensuring that everything comes on stream with regard to Tobago by the end of the day. From a WASA perspective, and again, before I leave, again, congratulations to the men of TNTech who have done a fantastic job and continue to do a great job in providing service to the people. With regard to WASA, as I reported yesterday, yes, we have been having some problems with the water treatment plants, both in Trinidad and Tobago. Some of those plants have come back up, and some of them continue waiting on the monitoring of the water quality before they come back up. In Tobago, of course, we have had some problems with the electricity, so some of the wells are being affected together with the water treatment plants with the electricity. By and large, we are operating with about 200 million gallons of water a day. If you put that into perspective, 242 is our optimal. We have been operating with about 216, so we have lost about 16 million gallons, but that is expected by the end of the day, that figure will go back up to around the 216 figure, which we have been operating in. Again, putting things into perspective, understanding how much rainfall that we have gotten. If you look at, when I looked at the Piaco area, we ended yesterday with about 71.5 millimeters of rainfall between the 21st, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. yesterday. In Piaco, we had about another 7.8 millimeters of rain, which took us to 79.3. So for the year so far, if you're putting it into perspective, on those days, we had 79.3. Total rainfall is 169 for the month of September. And the average for the month of September, what the long-term average is 188, and we're on the 24th. So all the rain that happened, we might just make the long-term average, which we expect for September. In Tobago, we're doing a little better. As a result, the total rainfall is 222 millimeters. The long-term average is 188 for the month of September. So we have already surpassed the long-term average by close to 20%. As a result of that, as you would expect, some of our dams are doing a little bit better. So some of my rain dancing activities did work a little bit more than I would have liked to see have happened. But it means in some areas we are still below the levels, especially in the areas of the Hollis and the Navet Dam continues in spite of being filled up by 100 million gallons of rainfall. As a result, 75 and 100 respectively, they are still way below the required levels. But all in all, again, the utilities, especially TNTech, has shown their resilience in times, and they have restored and bring back power to the most of the country. By the end of the day, most of Trinidad and Tobago would be back. The water situation is back. It is not in chronic situation. We are getting back water. And again, by the end of the day, we expect then that we would be back to where we were. TSTT is on the job, and that matter with TSTT will be resolved within the next 2 hours. MTS is out there working with the schools in trying to make sure that everything that they're back up and ready for school tomorrow, and they're providing Wednesday, sorry, not tomorrow, Wednesday. So they are working to try to do their job with MTS. Swim call, solid waste management again. Yesterday we opened the dumps a little bit longer to try to facilitate some of the garbage, and again they are working, and we probably will open them a little bit later this evening also to try to ensure that the cleaning up activities. So I'm pretty happy with how the utilities under my span of control has operated and responded to this particular crisis, and they continue to ensure to minimize the impact for the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Members of the media, just before I entertain a couple questions, I'd just like to re-emphasize that we continue to be under red level riverine watch alert, and also that we will continue to monitor the weather over the next few hours. In fact, what the Met Services told me is that they are not going to breathe a sigh of relief until midnight tonight. So everyone just stay alert, stay in touch. Members of the media, you've been doing a good job in getting the information out there. Continue to work with us. We appreciate it. At this time, we'll entertain a few questions. Yes, go on.
First of all, in terms of reports, has anybody been injured, hurt in any way? Have you gotten any reports of that because of the flooding?
No, it's always a risk in answering that. So how I'll preface it is that at this stage, we do not have any information of anyone being injured as a result of the weather that we've faced over the last 24 hours. But understand it can take some time for the information to get to us.
To you or Mr. Sinanan, how big of a problem is this issue of theft or breaches at the banks? Because several ministers mentioned it today.
Well, I think several of us mentioned it today because of how upsetting it is. Minister Sinanan is the one who brought it to my attention for me to get the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to launch an investigation into it. As Minister Sinanan said a short while ago, they spent a significant amount of time, energy, and money in doing the work on the Caroni River, and part of that work was building up the river banks. So it is an issue. If even it only happens in one instance, we still see it as an issue. And as Minister Hosein said, it's time that we all just be law-abiding citizens and start thinking about our fellow citizens rather than the selfish acts that then have consequences that affect other people.
Let me just add to what the minister just said. All you need is one breach to flood out an entire village. Just one breach. Because once you breach there, the water then has an access. And that breach just gets wider and wider and wider. Last year, we had a problem in I think it was at one of the schools, the Mahasapa schools, where the school was totally flooded out, the village was flooded out, because one person decided to put a water pipe from the sink into the river, and they buried back the pipe. Force of the river cleared away all the dirt, because when they refilled it, they did not compact it. And that caused the entire village of Kelly there to flood out, because one person decided to put outflow pipe into the river. Now, last night, about 10 o'clock, I was at a river in the part of the St. Joseph River. We had a contractor on site. There was a huge tree, about 60 or 70 feet in the river. We could not get access to go into the river because somebody decided to build the fence wall on the river wall and block the access, which is the river reserve. There's a reserve by every river. This person decided to claim the river reserve. So this morning we had to go back, myself and the director of PO, and we found that this is just taking too long because there was no real access to the river. So these are problems that we face all the time. To some person, it might just be just this little piece. But to somebody else, okay, I just encroaching a little bit on the river reserve. But they don't understand the long-term problems and the effect, because in most cases, when the entire area is flooded out, they call on the ministry and they call on local government and they call on the authorities, not understanding that it is a resident from the existing area that would have caused the problem. So it is a real problem. I can't tell you it's 300 or 400, but one breach is all it takes to flood out an entire area.
Yeah. Minister Young, you mentioned an investigation, but is there more that can be done to prevent this from happening, or put more monitoring? What else could be done, if anything?
The responsibility of all citizens not to break the law. I mean, what we can do in an instance like that is we have evidence and investigate it. There is no way that you can police every single instance and every square inch of Trinidad and Tobago. That's just impossible. But we will monitor, and if we find the persons, they will be prosecuted.